Market Journal, television for agricultural business decisions, is a presentation of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources. Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine.
Hello everyone, I'm Bill Dodd and thanks for joining us today on Market Journal. We're on a short week due to the Thanksgiving holiday and we've got a lot to discuss, so let's see what's happening in the agricultural industry this week. Starting things off today, we're taking another look at the Nebraska Land Link Program. This program aims to connect new or beginning farmers in search of land with landowners interested in leasing or selling their land to a new operator. We recently sat down with Extension educator Allan Vyhnalek to see what the program is all about and how you can get involved. Farm and ranch succession and transition can be a tricky ordeal for farmers and ranchers who may be ready to hang their hats for good. Furthermore, a 2017 survey of 3,500 farmers by the National Young Farmers Coalition listed access to land as the most difficult challenge for new farmers. That's where the Nebraska Land Link Program comes into play.
So for the land seekers, if you're looking to get into agriculture, production agriculture, if you're looking to farm or ranch, if you don't have a family member that owns that ground or access to a ground through a family member, you likely don't have good access to ground. And so the Land Seeker program was trying to just create another way of communicating about what ground might be available in a certain area or areas of the state. For landowners, we know that about half do have somebody coming back to their operation, so that's good news. The other half may or may not have someone come back to the operation. In many cases, they don't. And if they want to keep their farm intact as its own production unit, and that's important to them to have XYZ ranch or XYZ farm continue, then they would maybe consider trying to provide an opportunity for one of the land seekers to come help them with their operation and eventually take over.
Not only does this program bolster the probability of a farm or ranch operation staying functional after the original operators have moved on, the program is also beneficial to businesses of rural towns and the overall economy of the state.
We know that in rural Nebraska, and any part of Nebraska for that matter, the whole state's relatively rural, that if we keep more operations going, we have better chance of those small towns and all of Nebraska to stay healthier. If we start losing operations out there, even though all the land's still being farmed and all the ranches are still being grazed, we will lose businesses on Main Street. We know that inherently. So if we keep more operations afloat, it's kind of the purest kind of rural development or the community development, just keep operations going without them becoming larger and larger and larger all the time.
While there are plenty of people in the program seeking land, there aren't too many looking to part with it. While many people seeking land may jump at an opportunity for a plot of new ground, landowners who are seeking operations for succession will have the ability to select which applicants they would prefer to work with.
So when an application is submitted, it comes into the database, and then that will generate an email that comes to me. I'll send back that person, the land seeker, the landowner, an email saying, hey, I want to visit with you. And when I visit with the folks then, after they submitted their application, I'm asking them things like, what did you mean by what you said by this answer? I'm trying to make sure the application is complete. I make sure I understand what they're seeking, or I'm offering what they're offering. I'm trying to just check it out in terms of making sure that I understand what they have there. I am not posting anything about any of their information online, either land seeker or landowner, not going online. But then as I have landowners register their land, I'll look at land seekers that might fit, and I'll send those seeker applications to the landowner, and the landowner can decide who they would like to visit with, or if they would like to visit with somebody, or if they'd like to interview them or have them come to the farm or ranch. They can do that at that time. I'll be out of the process. Everybody can pick their own, pick who they'd like to work with. But I'll be kind of the clearinghouse of that information going back and forth. I'm basically not going to deny anyone a chance to apply, and we'll let the landowners decide who they would like to visit with in terms of matching seekers, the actual match of the seeker to the landowner.
As of now, there is no cost to apply for the program in-state or out-of-state. However, a small fee may be appropriated for some out-of-state applicants once their application has been approved. Furthermore, if your application is accepted, it should be noted it could take some time before a proper match is found for your particular situation.
And I hope people understand that this will not be a quick fix. People have to need patience. If you apply as a land seeker, you may be in a system for a year or years before we get you find you a appropriate landowner to match you with. And if you apply as a landowner, understand that I'll be probably sending you land seekers pretty much right away, but you have your choice of who you'd like to work with, and if none of those match, you don't have to accept them right away. We'll work on it. I look at it as a kind of a long-term process.
While many new farmers and ranchers will always be seeking new land, there may be several reasons a producer may want to turn their land over to a new generation. In either case, the Nebraska Land Link Program could give you a head start on the search for new land or tenants. If you'd like to apply for the Land Link program, you can visit farm.unl.edu/landlink, or you can also email Allan directly at avyhnalek2@unl.edu. We've also taken the liberty of posting this information on the Market Journal website as well. And time to move on to the markets. And joining us this week to discuss the livestock markets is Dr. Scott Brown. Dr. Brown is the Director of Strategic Partnerships for the University of Missouri's College of Agriculture, Food, and Natural Resources. Scott, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on, Bill.
And starting off today, I just kind of wanted to get your take on last week's cattle on feed report. There didn't seem to be too many surprises for producers. Placements were up, and marketings of fed cattle during October were down about 5% from 2020. What were your big takeaways, and what do these numbers mean for our producers?
Yeah, so I think the biggest takeaway from the report is it did in fact come in very close to pre-report expectations. So more cattle placements. I think as we looked at the October sales data out of many feeder cattle markets, we were seeing that increase as we moved some calves off of dry weather, maybe earlier than we would have in the past. So I didn't see a lot out of the report. On feed numbers continue to run at a year ago levels for the most part. So we're still full in many of those yards across the country. For me, it just points to what's going to transpire as we continue to get into 2022, which I expect to be fewer cattle placements and a tighter feeder cattle market as we get further into the coming year.
And recently it was reported that retail beef prices have increased 33% over the last year. Bids have been steady, with some reported higher prices at some auction markets. It seems packers have been highly profitable despite problems from COVID and other supply chain concerns. Are we starting to kind of see some balance in profits between packers and producers here?
So I think we're beginning to see the part of it. I mean, you raise a very good point. We're pushing record prices of beef to consumers, and of course, that always opens up the question of whether or not consumers were to shift away or consume less beef. So far, all the signals are demand continues to be strong, so it's good news on that front. I think when we look at the packer side of this equation, it's beginning to change. So margins still remain relatively wide, but I think as we look into 2022 and market-ready cattle supplies become tighter, I expect a situation where margins will continue to decline, and it puts producers in a better situation than maybe we've been in for a number of months. And you put on top of that some additional capacity that'll be coming on over the next couple of years, and I think we're getting ready to change the profitability for many in the packing industry as available supplies will match up much better with available capacity.
And I'd like to get in a little word on hogs here while we've got you. The most recent quarterly hogs report, it wasn't too spectacular for producers. However, February lean hog futures did hit a 5-week high last week. What were some of the contributing factors to those gains?
Yeah, so I think when you look at just where we've been in terms of breeding inventory and sows farrowed, et cetera, for me, I look at the first 2 or 3 quarters of 2022, and I actually expect pork production to be below 2021 levels for those same quarters. So I think we continue to be, relatively tighter in terms of pork supplies. I say that after what's been a number of years where we've seen quarter-over-quarter increases that now have kind of come to a halt. So I can be a little optimistic as we look ahead for pork prices. I know markets maybe recently haven't reflected that, but I do think there's some reasons to be optimistic as we get into the early part of 2022 and see those pork supplies tighten up. Of course, trade matters a lot in this discussion, and just how much China wants U.S. pork as they get into 2022 is certainly something we're going to watch.
And Scott, before we wrap things up with you today, do you have any marketing or risk management advice for the pork or beef producers that may be watching today?
So I keep saying it seems like we've gotten in an era where volatility is more the norm, not the exception. And risk management becomes more and more important, I think, in this more volatile world that we seem to live in. I sometimes am a little reluctant to say that out loud, in that I hope at some point we return to something that's more normal. But input cost increases that we see today, volatility from farm level to retail level, all those things to me just encourage me to remind folks that there's times to do risk management. Maybe now is a good time to do that, especially if you can at least lock in a portion of your product with some type of reasonable return.
And that's going to wrap it up for us today, Scott. Thank you so much for joining us this week.
Thanks a lot, Bill, for having me on.
Moving over to the grain markets now, and we were joined earlier in the week by Heartland Farm Partners President Jeff Peterson to see how things are shaping up as we head into the holiday weekend. Thanks for being here again, Jeff. So getting started here, looking at the latest crop progress report, it looks like corn and soybean harvest are nearly complete, but we did see the good to excellent rating on our winter wheat crop drop a little bit in quality. Generally, wheat is kind of closely tied with the value of the dollar, so how has that played out in the markets as we started off the week here?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because as we dig into that, we'll start first and just talk about the condition of that week, because that's got the market a little concerned. 44% good to excellent on that rating. Believe it or not, though, last year we were 43%. But I think what everybody's looking at is a 5-year average is about 52%. And then the other thing, when we put a kind of an overall rating, so when we look at not just the good to excellent, we look at the poor, the very poor. And when we bring all that together, what we end up finding is that this is the second lowest rated crop that we've had going all the way back to 1986. And so where some of the problems are showing up, South Dakota is a problem, and also the Pacific Northwest. So those are some areas. All the other areas are doing pretty good, but we need to watch those areas. But then as we take a look at just that wheat market overall, actually this week we've had some really strength in this wheat market, but it hasn't necessarily originated out of the U.S. It's really been more coming from what we're seeing from those very strong wheat prices on the Paris milling wheat, so coming out of Europe, also what we're seeing out of the Black Sea. In addition to that, there's some concerns also coming out of Australia and just how that wheat harvest is coming along. So overall, we've got a situation here where wheat's still got a lot of strength to it here yet.
We saw soybean futures kind of a little bit all over the place this week. Soybeans were up, soybean oil was up, soybean meal was down. What are some of the contributing factors to those price movements there?
Yeah, I think it really kind of starts off with the fact that we do have plenty of beans overall. And also, if we look down to South America, I would say that Brazil is actually getting off to a pretty good start. A little bit of concern on Argentina. But when we bring all that together, the fact that we had some weakness showing up on the meal side, the fact that there's some concerns on just the shipment pace that's going on, that's put a little bit of pressure on the soybean market. But I do think we have to be careful. We do have to maintain a little bit of premium in that market yet. There is some concerns on weather in Argentina yet. And then going forward, the other thing that I think we're going to see is there's still some very good demand. Crush margins are good. Exports are good enough. So I still think we've got some more upside in that market yet also.
And on the corn side of things, we're seeing fewer and fewer inspections here for exports. As of September 1st, USDA reported that 9.3 million tons difference from this time last year. Should this be a concern for our producers here? Yeah,
we need to watch those numbers closely. On the corn side, there's a couple different ways to look at the numbers. So we first take a look at it from an export inspection side. Those numbers come out every Monday, and that's a good way to kind of gauge how quickly we're getting shipped everything that we've got on the books. And just to kind of another way to look at it from what you had ended up saying, Bill, is that we're down about 18.2% since September 1st compared to a year ago. USDA in their November report had us only down 9.2%. So the numbers would suggest there's a little concern. However, we believe because of the smaller Frayne corn crop that they harvested, we believe that's going to still open up some demand potentially a little bit later on for us on the corn export side. So we're not too worried yet on what the corn export pace is.
And we're going to be looking at a short week for the market here this week with the Thanksgiving holiday. What are some things that you think producers should be paying attention to with with overseas markets?
Yeah, a few of the things that we really want to watch. We want to watch if we continue to see that strength in the wheat market coming out of the Paris milling wheat coming out of Europe and also the Black Sea. We do want to continue to watch what's going on in China. In particular, just to watch their economy, to just make sure there isn't any surprises, any reports that come out over this break here. Also continue to watch just the overall uncertainty on the energy market side to see if there's anything announcement-wise. We're not expecting anything out of OPEC, but that'd be something that we would watch.
And again, with the shortened week for the market, what are some marketing or risk management advice that you'd like to share with our viewers at home?
Yeah, I think right now, kind of going into this shortened week, if you've got anything that you're looking to move, there's going to be some good basis strength here on a short week like this. Not a lot of people want to deliver bushels, so if you want to deliver something, there should be some good basis levels out there. I would say also this is a good time to just get all your numbers put together, think about where your break-evens are at, think about what you've got sold, what you've got to sell yet, and start working on getting some targets in here, because on this move that we had in this markets here, we are going to be needing to make some sales here soon. Not that we think that the top's in at this point, but we're entering this time in here where you always can get some surprises.
Thanks again to Scott and Jeff for their time and expertise this week. Next week, we'll be joined by North Dakota State University Crop and Marketing Specialist Dr. Frayne Olson for a check of the markets. If you have a question you'd like for us to ask, please get in touch with us on social media or via email, and we'll be sure to pass your question along. Next up, agriculture is full of opportunity. There are many facets to the industry, even beyond the farm and ranch gate, so that young people with diversified interests can find all kinds of employment opportunities. For instance, in order to train new workers in their manufacturing plant, as well as service technicians out in the field, Class of America recently opened a new training academy at the company's North American assembly plant for the Lexion Combine in Omaha. The new facility offers space for laboratory work, classroom study, as well as large bays for training on the sizable combines, tractors, and forage harvesters in the class lineup. You can learn more in the November issue of Nebraska Farmer. And it's time now for weather with Nebraska Extension Ag Climatologist and Market Journal Chief Meteorologist Al Dutcher. And Al, as it is a short week for us here at Market Journal, we'd like to know what you're keeping an eye on as we get ready for the Thanksgiving holiday.
Well, Bill, since we're taping before the holidays because of the university shutdown, I thought this would be the best time to give an update on what we might think is going to occur with the winter forecast. Seems that we've seen quite a bit of changes in the atmosphere since the NOAA released their initial forecast back in the month of October. That being said, just a quick short look at the weather outlook as we've seen it during the taping. It doesn't look like we're going to see any significant weather across Nebraska, at least till we get to later next weekend. We do have a couple troughs moving through. Of course, we had one moving through the day before Thanksgiving, and then of course we've got another one that might be moving through as we go through this afternoon, evening. That's just going to deflect across to most of northeastern Nebraska, and then there's another little wave that'll come through on Wednesday. Between that, we're going to see very warm temperatures as the ridge builds back in. So overall, we can't complain for this next week. But more importantly, we're more worried about when the weather conditions are. So the first thing I want to draw your attention to is the difference between this fall and last fall. This is basically the precipitation over the last 90 days. You can see that much of the upper Midwest has seen a wet trend and a very dry trend to our south. Let's compare this to last year when we've seen a little bit of moisture down to our south, very dry conditions, which was the start of a major drought in the Dakotas. So there is some significant differences already between the two fall periods. More importantly, we do have a La Nina event going on in the equatorial Pacific. The main area below normal sea surface temperatures pointing out that phenomena sits here over the equatorial region. Plus we have the Gulf of Alaska, very cold conditions as the upper air low has been parked pretty much in this region and been bringing much in the way of storminess to Alaska. Notice that the ice content is slipping down. We're seeing more Arctic ice formation in the western portion of the basin than we've seen since 2012. So we're going to have more cold air up in Alaska, and they've been dealing with some very brutal conditions. So any low pressure systems that are able to dig down the western U.S. coast are going to be able to tap that Arctic air, and those are the ones that we worry about with major storm systems as they move into the center part of the country. If they come in and move in an easterly fashion across the northern plains, generally those troughs will start to intensify once they get east of the mountains. That brings in those Arctic clippers into our region, taps that eastern U.S. trough, and most of the cold air lies from eastern Nebraska toward the east coast. Now, in terms of the length of this event, underneath the surface of the equatorial region, we got this cold pocket moving up the surface, and it looks like we're starting to see warming behind it. So this last push looks like it's going to take about 30 to 45 days. and then we'll start to see this warmth coming in behind them, and that's the reason why CPC is indicating that as we go the second half of the winter, we will start to see this event die down. That being said, here's a projection from all the global models. What we're looking at is a 0.5 line. Once we cross above this, we go into neutral conditions, and once we move across the 0 line, we have more El Nino-like conditions. So as we go to the late spring or late winter into early spring and we cross over, we're likely to see more of the southern jet become an influence. That means that we may see a return to some moisture across the southern plains, and that might be relief for western Nebraska as we get storms situated in the upslope flow. Generally, those occur during the months of March and April. So overall, I expect to see occasional bouts of severe storms activity across the central United States. And the most active period most likely will be when we see one of these atmospheric river events set up over the western United States, where the low pressure systems themselves bring that storm track into northern California. Those are the systems that we've seen during the late October period that brought good moisture to eastern Nebraska at the expense of central Nebraska. And with the deficits that we've had so far this fall in central Nebraska and southwest Nebraska, if we wanted to make all that precipitation up there in this winter period because of such a poor subsoil moisture recharge during the fall, it's going to require 150 to almost 200% of normal, depending on the location, of winter snowfall. I don't think we want to see that much, but we would like to see a semblance of normal precipitation so that as we go into spring, we have the opportunity to make up those moisture deficits. So overall, it looks like we're going to see more of a typical winter and maybe more cold air at the beginning of the winter than we've seen last winter, but overall, expect to see an occasional snowstorm just like we always do in Nebraska.
Thanks, Al. Finally today, we're taking a look back at one of our more popular stories. AgrAbility is a national program whose mission is to enhance the quality of life for farmers, ranchers, and other agricultural workers with disabilities. Market Journal was fortunate enough to meet with AgrAbility Program Manager Rod Peterson a couple of years ago as he set out to document the program's successes here in Nebraska. The story you're about to see stands out for its triumph of coordinated efforts and a family's personal determination. The National AgrAbility Project has had a well-known presence in the Cornhusker State. In fact, just this year, the 28th Annual National AgrAbility Workshop was hosted right here in Lincoln. An ever-growing event that started in 1991 with just over a dozen attendees has grown to one of the best turnouts in the history of the program with about 240 registered attendees. But our story takes us to northeast Nebraska, where third-generation farmer Eric Beckman was gracious enough to share his experience in the AgrAbility program with us.
Pouring down rain and just hydroplane coming around and rolled over from there, and a couple of my buddies then pulled me out. I was half my body was laying out of the window, I think, and then I know the life flight was called, and then but they weren't even able to come because of the weather was so bad. First thing I remember, I was laying in the hospital up in Sioux City. Is the first thing I remember, and really didn't know what was going on at that time yet. I probably really didn't realize how affected I was until probably 2 weeks after my accident, actually.
Eric had sustained a broken neck, including his C3, 4, and 5 vertebrae, resulting in quadriplegia. While hospitalized, Eric was told this could be an opportunity to do something else with his life other than farm. But as far as he was concerned, there was only ever one option. He was born a farmer, and he would continue to do what he loved.
We were at Craig Hospital, and they had meetings every, 4 to 6 weeks. And it was with our doctors, his PT, his OT, all of them. And they sat down and laid it out for Eric and said, this is an opportunity for you to get to do something else if you'd like. Your state will fund for you to go back to college. There's a lot of things you can do. And they said, if there's anything you'd ever wanted to do, what would you like to do? And Eric sat there and he didn't even wait. It wasn't but a couple seconds. And he says, well, I've never wanted to do anything but farm. And I know just being married to him and all the stories talking about growing up, he knew from a small child he was going to farm. He was the one that was pushing the tractors around the living room, that was falling asleep in the tractor with his dad. His dad would put him in a hay bale or out by some haystacks and lay him down to sleep while he farmed. You know, all the stories I heard, that's all he ever wanted to do was farm. And I remember my stomach just going, oh, how is that going to work? Enter Rod Peterson, Program Manager for Nebraska AgrAbility. Despite the challenge presented to Eric, Rod stepped in and showed the Beckmans just how it was going to work when it came to getting Eric back to the career that he had always loved,
and has continued to be there for the Beckman family for the last 12 years.
At that point in time, I was lucky enough to work with Beckmans here in northeast Nebraska. What we do is we take referrals, sometimes from vocational rehabilitation, sometimes from family members, OTs, PTs, many different referral sources. We contact the individual, we explain the program to them, we go to the farm, we do a farm assessment, we find out exactly what assistive technology they need to continue farming. We make those recommendations many times to vocational rehabilitation or any other funding sources that we can find for them. Our job is to see what their limitations are, match them with the assistive technology that they need to continue farming and ranching. And that's basically what AgrAbility does.
Learning to live with his disability through the help and care of the AgrAbility program, Eric had a message for anyone out there who may be dealing with a disability they've never had to face before and may be thinking there's no way they can get back to the demanding work that farming and ranching requires on a daily basis.
Oh, there's a lot of things. I mean, they can change your life for you. They have resources out there that you don't know about. They can give you, to get you back into what you want to do in life, and they're great people to work with, easy people to work with, and very knowledgeable. And yeah, I can't say enough about them. I don't know where I'd be at today if it wasn't for them. AgrAbility brought me back to where I'm farming again and to doing what I want to do again. And I don't know if I would have been able to do that without them.
That's one of our most viewed stories right there. If you know of an agricultural worker needing assistance, you can reference the National AgrAbility Project's contact list, which we've posted on our website. And for more information on how you can help start a project in your state, you can also contact the National AgrAbility Project through their toll-free hotline at 1-800-825-4264. And that's going to do it for this week's show. And if you missed a story, be sure to download the Market Journal mobile app or follow us on social media to join in on the conversation. We'll hope to see you right back here next time. Till then, I'm Bill Dodd. Thanks for watching.
Join Market Journal online at marketjournal.unl.edu. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine. Market Journal is produced by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources.